Welcome to the WNBF UK podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the WNBF UK podcast with me, Sarah Glanville, as your host. Today we are joined by our 2022 First Timers Men's Physique Medium Champion, Ian Gunster. Hello Ian, how are you today?
Hello, I am fantastic. I am very excited to be doing this. So yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I'm glad you're here to do this.
Definitely. It feels like I've been not seen you in ages as well. So it's good to get a little catch up.
It's been a long time, so lots to catch up on. Just for our listeners, I'm going to give them a little bit of a background on you, Ian. So Ian, you competed at the WNBF UK's First Timers and Novice Championships in July last year. And in our chat today, I think we're going to have quite a lot to cover.
Yeah.
But of course, looking back at all the success that you had last year, and to find out what you've been up to since you stepped off stage. But we do have a really cool and relevant topic of conversation that we're going to focus on today, which is first timers mindset. So setting expectations as a first timer and how in particular you, Ian, approached your first ever competitive season in 2022. So we've got quite a lot to chat about. So let's just get started.
Let's crack on.
So you chose to step on stage last year for the first time. So there's going to be a lot of listeners, I think, that are in the same shoes today, either at the start of their prep or thinking about what it might be like to step on stage at some point. So what made 2022 the right year for you to start your competitive bodybuilding career?
So it's a very, very good question. So for me, the timing was absolutely perfect due to my personal circumstances.
Yeah.
So the majority of people listening will probably not know. So I served for 7.5 years in the army. And when you're in the army, it's very, very hard to have a lot of control over the things that you're doing in terms of training, in terms of nutrition.
Yeah.
2022 was the year that I'd actually left the army. And it just fell really well. And the time that I left, it gave me pretty much a perfect amount of time to kind of get myself into the mindset of going into a prep.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd always trained and I'd always been in fairly good shape from my military career. But I was just at that perfect sort of crossroads where I'm like, right, I've got no sort of obstacles in my way. I'm at home now all the time. I've got access to a gym 24/7. I can actually control what I eat.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing for me. I've got total control of my own schedule, my own life. So I'm like, right, I can get into the kind of mindset of I want to compete and I want to kind of give this a go. Whereas before it was just never possible. I think going away for sort of 6-7 weeks at a time and not having any control over your diet or training, you're never going to be able to have that sort of success. And for those that do, because I do know that there are some military guys that compete and military girls that compete, I take my hats off to them because it could never have been me. So I mean, timing for me was just perfect, and that was where I really just decided, right, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to kind of dip my toe in the water and go for it. So yeah, that was it for me.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And was it on your radar for quite a while that you wanted to do it at some point?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I've always had obviously a massive interest in bodybuilding. Like you'll know yourself, like looking up to obviously like Mr. Olympias and stuff like that, and you're like that is a bit of me. Like that's what I want to do. Yeah. So I'd always trained with a more bodybuilding focus. Like the military's very cardio and sort of functional fitness focused, and I'd always had that more. I want to have big arms and I want to have big shoulders, big chest. So I'd always known that. It was something that I wanted to do, but it was just something that I never thought would be possible. Do you know what I mean? Until I got to that point where I was like, actually, there's nothing really holding me back. So you're kind of going to have to put yourself out there a little bit and go for it.
Yeah. And that was like the first opportunity you had, you kind of just grabbed it.
Yeah. I mean, I'd got myself into a good position. Like it's not like I say that you don't have control over what you eat and stuff like that. It's only at certain times. Like for the most part, you do have control over your diet and your training schedule and stuff. So I'd got myself into as good a position as I thought I could. And then once those kind of constraints are taken away, I was just like, do you know what? There's no better time to do it, because it's it's one of those, it's an experience, and that's what I really wanted to kind of go for, was the experience, and to kind of, just like I said, try something totally new that I'd always had an interest in. Like I was always interested, I was always very keen for it. So yeah, it just worked out very well.
Yeah, that sounds like the right time, the perfect time to do it. So I guess people always talk about like a why and stuff. So what was your why? Was it quite tied up with just the first chance that you had to actually go forward and do it, or was there something more solid about why for you?
Yeah, I mean, I do like a challenge. Like I genuinely, like I've always kind of tried to go for the harder things. Like I like to push myself, I like to challenge myself, and for me it was just see how well I can do. Like I love the process. Like I genuinely, I love training, I love that sort of discipline side of it. And I do think that for me, it's very healthy to have discipline in my life. And I really wanted to kind of see, right, how far can I take this? Because people get in good shape, and they get in good shape for going on holiday and stuff like that. And for me, it was always a little bit more than that. It wasn't just I want to look good. It was more I want to really see how far I can push this. And that was my why for me, was just the challenge of it. And actually having like a goal was, I think, for a lot of people, very important, because people have their work goals, they have their kind of goals outside of this. But for me, I'm like, every single kind of waking second went into this, outside of work life, outside of kind of my social life. It was this was everything that I was focused on. And for me, it's very healthy, because I like having that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important, is to like, and balance looks different for everyone. And if you're someone who is very goal driven and very orientated by having something to focus on, it's actually really good to have something out with, in different facets of your life. So you've got goals in your
100%.
career, you've got goals with your friends and things you want to like potentially go on holiday and stuff like that. But you can also have goals that really are just intrinsic to you and driving you forward, and you feel like you're growing. So that's a great why.
Definitely. Yeah.
Brilliant. So 2022 was the year that you were going to go for it. You decided this was the year. So when you were planning your first season, why did you choose WNBF UK First Timers as your first show that you were going to work towards?
Genuinely, this is like the easiest question to answer. And I think it's purely because they do that first timer show. Like you know yourself, like it's nerve-wracking. Like it is nerve-wracking. Like you're putting yourself out there and you've not done it before. So I think being in that position where everyone's in the same boat as you, it gives you that little kind of boost where you're like, I'm not the only person here who's putting myself out there. Every single person is in the same boat. And I think it's good because it builds that kind of community as well, where it's a lot less nerve-wracking backstage than it probably would be when you're against these seasoned competitors who have done maybe their 4th, 5th, 6th season. And you're kind of stood there like a little fish in a big pond, do you know what I mean? Whereas everyone's together, you're kind of all there for the same reason, and everyone's going through that same process at the same time. So it was a no-brainer for me. Like obviously they're the only federation that offer that in the UK, and so for me straight away I was like, right, that's going to be the one. That's going to be the one that I go for. I'd followed quite a lot of people who have been with WNBF and have done shows with them anyway, and when they announced the first time a show, I was like, right, that's going to be the one for me. So it was just so easy, like to be like, right, that's my goal, go for that. And then everything else after it was kind of just like a bonus, but this was always like my main focus for the year.
That's awesome. And I totally agree. Like you want to compete naturally, and it is the only stage that's designated for first timers or novice competitors who are still at their very kind of beginning of their bodybuilding career. And you're like so right about the community aspect, and how everyone backstage it felt like everyone was pulling for each other. And it's nice that you kind of were able to foresee that and hope that was what the environment was going to be like, and pivot your whole first season around coming to that show for the first one.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think it's very easy. Like when you see, like you do watch like your Mr. Olympias and stuff like that, your Miss Olympias, and you kind of see that backstage. Everyone looks very macho and aggressive, and they're like, right, I'm here to win. And although everyone's there for the reason of competing against each other, I think that's the nerve-wracking bit, because you could be against people who are potentially going for pro cards and stuff like that, and you're like, I'm just wanting to have this experience, and this is like a big thing for me. But you've got some people who might not be there for that. They're there for that, right? I want to win. I want to beat everybody here. So for me, like, first timers was, although you still obviously want that competitive element, you still want to win. You do want to make friends, and you do want to like feel part of something. It's not just about like, I'm going to turn up, win, and then leave. You want to be part of something where you can actually, get to know these people, get involved with the community, because all these people have the exact same mindset as you. And it's not very often that you meet people with that mindset. So it's good to actually be part of it.
You're so many things there are just like so bang on. I think that as the sport, it's very, very competitive. But the thing that anyone coming into the sport has got to realise is that there's levels to this. Yeah, and 100%. Everyone was at one point a first timer. But when you go to these open shows, you do stand up against people who could be competing, that could be their first year and their 7th show in their first year, or it could be their 7th year competing.
Exactly.
And you have no idea what you're going to be walking up against. And if you are someone who is competitively minded, which most of us are, if we want to choose to stand on a stage and compete, that it's awesome to come into an environment where everyone's on a level playing field. One, a natural stage where everyone's a tested athlete, but also everyone it's either you got to stand on stage in the first timers class where everyone was stepping on for the first time together. Everyone was in the same position that they, probably had done their research, but this is the first time they're actually going to have to step on stage and do it. So it's that kind of balance between, having that show the experience, but also being able to do it with people and have an experience where you meet everyone. And you're what you said there also about us, we're such a niche little sport.
Yeah.
And like even in the gyms that we train in, and we're quite lucky to have kind of more an environment that is quite centered around bodybuilding, both of us at different gyms. But even at that, you don't have exposure to lots of people who maybe on the natural side of the sport.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to come into an environment where everyone is a like-minded individual. When are you ever going to meet people who are more like you than on show day?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the big thing, is you meet all these people who've been through the exact same thing as you, and they're just experiencing it for that first time. And that for me was a massive part of it. And I think that was part of the enjoyment, was you've got the nerves, but then as you start to talk to all these other guys and girls, you're just like, everyone else has got these nerves as well. So it just made you feel so much more at ease, knowing that you're not doing it alone, even though you are doing it alone, but you're not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. So you were going to compete.
Yep.
You knew the stage that you were wanting to step on. So how did you feel kind of heading into that first ever prep? Because it's a totally daunting and different experience. So how did you feel when you knew you were starting that?
It was definitely daunting. I think this for me, so this is going back to kind of like knowing when I was ready and stuff like that. Yeah. I'd actually just done a photo shoot in December of 2021. So I'd done like a photo shoot prep, which I'd planned to do. It wasn't so much like I wanted a photo shoot of like, look at me, but it was the same sort of aspect of, I want to see how far I can push this. And I got myself into a good position with the photo shoot. And I gained a lot of confidence from seeing how far I could actually push myself. So it was just a sort of more intense version of that. Like obviously with the prep, you do push a lot harder. You do, it's going to be hard. Like nobody's under any illusion that they're going to go into a prep and think it's easy. So I think I was in a much better position than some people might have been in, because it wasn't the first time I'd got myself down to that stage before. Yeah. But I mean, it's definitely it's a big decision. It's definitely like a big mental battle that you have with yourself. It's not like I'm going to get in good shape, I'm going to go on a little 8-week diet plan. I'm going to have to kind of devote every decision I make from now until stepping on stage is going to impact that performance that I have, or that end result. So I think it's a big thing to wrap your head around. And I think you do need to sit down and you do need to kind of weigh up, if it's going to be worth it for you, because you might have holidays booked, you might have work commitments that you're unable to get out of. So I think you do need to sit down and be like, you need to be realistic with yourself and be like, right, am I going to be able to do this? And then 2, you need to think about, do I have the mental sort of resilience and the mental fortitude for this? Because there are going to be so many times where all you want to do is go and eat a burger and chips, or go and get 12 Krispy Kremes. But you have to have that ability to just be like, right, I've got a goal that I know it's going to be hard, and then it's working towards it. But I think that's the beauty of it as well, is you're literally doing something that loads of people won't understand. Like loads and loads of people will be like, what are you doing? Like you're carrying Tupperware everywhere. You're sitting down planning every meal. You're absolutely rigid with every aspect of your life, and so many people won't get it. But I think if you've got that kind of mental capacity to be like, right, I know what goes into it, I know what's involved, you've done my research, you can really kind of grow from it as a person, because you can see how far you can push yourself, and it's probably going to be way further than you ever imagined. Because I know it was for me. I was just like, week on week on week, I was like, I can't believe I'm still doing this, and I can't believe like I'm able to do this. But so I think the mental aspect of it is definitely challenging, but I think it's probably the most rewarding part of it, is because you just grow so much as a person.
Oh, completely.
From doing that.
No, absolutely. And I think that obviously you had a bit of experience with your photo shoot prep, like kind of coming in and knowing potentially a little bit that how far you had to push for your photo shoot prep, and that was further than a diet you'd probably ever taken before, but knowing that to get on stage was going to be even more. And I completely agree with you when you're saying that this is so much more a mental, I think for me anyway, and it sounds like it was for you, prep was so much more of a mental challenge and a mental battle than it was a physical one. And I think when you've got a diet and it's a short-term diet, you see it purely as, your goal is, I want to lose weight or whatever. But with this, it has to be mentally preparing yourself for the fact that this is going to probably test you, and there's going to be days that it's going to be pure grit and pure 100%. Resilience to get through it. And it's nothing to do with, or it's very little to do with your drive to train and your drive to do how much you enjoy training or how much you enjoy being healthy. This is more than that. It's about you being able to push yourself through the hard days and see a longer term goal as more important, or more important to you personally than the short term sort of relief you would get from eating something off plan or taking the day off or not finishing your steps.
I think 100%. Like it's like it's very cliche, but like the reward of it all isn't just about stepping on stage. It's more about seeing how like you just turn into a totally different person. Like you are proper character building, I think, in terms of you go from this person who kind of wants to step on stage for the first time, and you turn into this person who is so disciplined in every aspect of their life. They can push through some really hard days. They can train when they don't want to train. They can really just kind of drag themselves out of those really, really hard days, and then come out the other side, and you're in that like position where you feel class, you look amazing, the best you've ever looked. And I think the confidence you can grow from that, just knowing that you're able to do something like that, is absolutely fantastic, and it's really, really rewarding. That was probably one of the biggest things for me, was aside from being able to compete and obviously do well in my shows, it was just the reward of being like, I know that I can do this now. And it's just that knowledge that, right, I'm capable of this. And it's quite a sort of weird realization, because you do see pictures of like, guys and girls, obviously, when on Instagram and stuff, and you look at these like absolutely units, and you're like, these guys look class. And then you get to that stage yourself, and you're like, I've done it. You know what I mean? I'm here. Like, what is happening? And it's amazing. It's really good, but it's definitely the mental side of it. It's challenging, but it's so rewarding.
Yeah. And I suppose thinking about before you actually stepped into that prep journey and thinking about what prep was going to be like, did you anticipate it being as it was, or were you surprised by something else?
I did anticipate it was. I knew it was. Everyone knows it's going to be hard. Like you're under no illusion when you very first start that it's going to be difficult. I think for for the first sort of, because I think my prep in total before show one was about 22 weeks.
Yeah.
I think for the first sort of 14 to 15 weeks, I was like, this is all right. This is like plain sailing, but you'll know yourself when you get to that point where you're like, I am going to have to dig now.
Yeah.
That's when you you start to see the challenges and you start to feel the fatigue and you start to have that sort of hyper food focus where you're like, I could eat, like I could proper eat, but it's that's where I think if you already have it in your head that you're going to anticipate it being difficult, I think you're just waiting for it to get hard. And I think if you're mentally prepared for that, it's not going to be anywhere near as bad.
Yeah.
You're not going to go into it thinking it's plain sailing, but I think it's very easy to kind of get to that point where you're starting to feel, oh, this isn't too bad, this isn't that bad, and it is going to get hard for absolutely everyone. So I think it's just having that sort of expectation. You know it's going to be hard, but if you've mentally prepared beforehand, then you should be okay. Like it's all mind over matter at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I think it's about, for me, a massive part was around whose journey was I looking at, and I don't really like comparing myself to other people, but I think before you've ever stepped into a prep, you do have to look at other people's experience and trying to learn from it. But I also tried to be careful on whose messages I was consuming, because some people are very, like yourself, very positive through the experience and see it as character building and as building resilience in yourself, and a very positive experience. But there are people out there who don't portray it in that way and who forget that they've chosen to prep. So I think that for me it was very much like you said, anticipating it was going to get tough. But I think for me, actually, I was quite surprised that because I'd prepared for it to be so hard, that when I actually got into it, I was very surprised at my kind of eternal positivity about it. Like, even the days that were tough, I got to the end of that day and it was just the most rewarding feeling that you'd stuck to what you were supposed to do, you'd done it anyway, you pushed through it. And really, like, although the end goal of stepping on stage is the longer term reward, I found reward in every single day, especially on the hard days that I probably could have just said, oh, do you know what, it'd be easy to take a day off here.
Like you said, the hard days are what makes it, I think, because they are the days where you have to kind of realize how committed you are, because there'll be a lot of people that get to that stage and they just walk away and they're like, this isn't worth it. And I think that's what does make the difference between those who make stage and they're like they've gave everything, and those who might have pulled out halfway through. And I mean, there would never be any shame in anyone pulling out. And I mean, every now and then you would think, like, is this worth it? Like I had those thoughts as well, and it's not like I would ever try and hide the fact. Like I had those thoughts every now and then where I'm missing out on loads of stuff, and I'm starving, hungry, and I'm just like, is this worth it? But then you kind of give yourself a little wobble, and you're like, right, nah, head back on, let's do it. And I think that's where the reward comes from, is having that ability to always kind of see the bigger picture and realize how far you're coming. Because every single day you just get that little bit better, and it's so cliche, but that little 1% better every single day, and at the end of it you're 100% better. It is a proper cliche, but it is true. Like once you put that effort in, it definitely it's the most rewarding thing. So 100%. I think the mindset aspect of it, as long as you can prepare yourself, I think you'll definitely do all right, especially going into your first season.
Yeah, and I think, like, harkening back to something you said earlier and what you just kind of said again there, obviously there's so many factors in your life that you have to consider before you start prepping. So for you, like, you'd finished with the military, and you were saying, right now I actually have the freedom to control my diet 100%. I don't have travel or expectations or anything coming up. This is my 6 months, 9 months to focus on what I'm going to be doing for my competitive ambitions. And everyone's got a different amount of stuff that's on their plate. So work, family commitments, and life, travel, injury, all this other stuff. So I think picking your time to compete is so important when you have the capacity, not just mentally to be able to push through, but also to be really honest with yourself and fair with yourself that do I have the capacity in life to take this on? And then if something comes up in the middle of your prep, either for, you know, mentally you're not feeling like it's there, or something happens and your circumstances change, there's never a shame in stepping away and saying this isn't the right time.
Not at all. I think that's where people could be potentially very hard on themselves, and I think that's where the negative aspect of it can potentially creep in for people. They look at someone who potentially does pull out a prep, and they'd be like, oh, they're not as mentally tough, or they've not got what it takes. And it's not that at all. I think everyone's got their different situations, and I think as long as you've got all of those things in place to make sure that you've got no massive distractions, and you've done as best you can to prepare, then you should be okay. But there's always going to be bumps along the road, and there's never any shame in somebody obviously having to pull out, like 100%.
And I think having a support system there for you is so important. So do you want to talk about what your support system looked like?
Yeah, I mean, so me, I just live at home, just me and my missus, and a little dog who was a lifesaver on prep. Because you get the steps in. That is my number one tip: get a dog, and you will never not get your steps in.
Yeah.
But I've got a very good social circle in terms of, like, all of my friends understood exactly what I was doing, and they know how sort of focused I am on it. Obviously, outside of competing, I've got my personal training business and online coaching business. So they know how committed I am to the training side of things. Obviously, my girlfriend, she's on board with it. I think it's probably fair to say that when you go through a prep, like, your partner goes through the prep with you.
Oh, totally.
So, I mean, it is a selfish endeavor, but I mean, apart from that, like, I've got my coach, so Vaughn, he, like, unbelievable. Definitely, like, for me, I definitely wouldn't have been able to even get through some of those hard days without having that sort of support of the people around me, but also my coach. So I definitely think that's a massive aspect of it as well. And for me, it helped massively. Like, it sometimes you need that other person to kind of give you a head of wobble, because if you're having those bad days, somebody needs to kind of set you straight. And Vaughn done that for me more than one occasion. So I can't really sit there and be like, oh yeah, I'm alpha macho man. Like, I didn't have any problems, because there were days where I was like, mate, please tell me this is how I should be feeling, because at the moment I am ready to throw in the towel. And do you know what I mean? You've got those people in your life who are going to have that positive impact, and I think it's just important that you make sure that you do have the right people in your corner. And you'll know yourself, like, you've got a very good support network with Steve. Like, even on show day, he was my support network as well. So I mean, having the right people in your corner is going to make a massive difference to your overall experience of going through, like, a prep.
Yeah, I think that what you've hit on there is, like, you've literally hit every element of the people that make up your life. So I think for you, obviously, with your business being within the fitness industry, and your clients are probably very interested in what you're doing, that does really massively help. And I think that if you're working in the fitness industry, you probably will have that fortunate position where people do understand it. For me, I don't work in the fitness industry, so I was really lucky that my work were really supportive. And I think it's just about signposting to them what you're doing, and your face is getting more drawn, and you're eating your Tupperware, and you're not going to have the biscuits or the chocolate they're handing out at in the office. And it's just being really honest with everyone about what's happening, so they all can get on board. And then with your friends and families, the exact same. You're just going to have to signpost. And living with someone, it's when you literally hit the nail on the head. When you prep, that person preps with you. And you go from, there's no date nights, there's no eating out, there's no takeaway, there's no, like, even if you go, like, I remember, like, we'd go to the cinema, like, for something to do for a date night or whatever, and he'd be sitting eating popcorn and drinking a full fat Coke, and I'd be sitting there with my water and my Diet Coke. Like,
there's no ice blast, no pick and mix.
So it's the way I've always kind of tried to explain it to people is, like, to friends and stuff, is I always wanted to be involved. So if they were doing something, I'd want to come out and take part, and it was my choice not to eat with them or drink with them. But you almost feel like there's, like, a glass wall in between you and your friends and what they're doing, because so much of socializing is food and drink, and
Yeah.
Even though you can be there and you can still be like literally the life of the party, and I'm the first one on the dance floor even if I don't have a drink, like there is this element that you can't quite connect with them. But I think you just have to be very, very honest about what's going on with you and sharing their experience. Don't talk the whole time about it, because people hate that. But if they ask questions, you just be kind of ruthlessly honest about how you're getting on and tell them exactly what's happening on your journey and get them to buy in, I suppose, to the experience that you're having.
I mean, I think what you touched on there with you're choosing to go on prep. That's one of the biggest factors, is you're choosing to do this. The other people around you aren't choosing that. So they shouldn't have to drastically change their behavior for you. And I think that was a big thing. So I was the exact same boat as you. Like, I would still go out to the pub with my mates and stuff like that, but I just wouldn't drink. I would go home a bit earlier. I'd drive, I'd give them lifts or whatever. But you don't have to totally isolate yourself. I mean, there will be times that you miss because you're doing endless amounts of cardio on the Stairmaster or something like that.
You're tired,
but you don't have to remove yourself totally from the social situation. But I think it is very important to understand that other people are just going about their daily life. So like you said, you don't need to constantly hammer home, right, I'm on prep. You also don't need to kind of expect them to change their behavior. Like if you want to eat all of the food next to me, then you can do. My choice that I'm sat here with my Tupperware. Like you don't have to alter your behavior. And I think that's what's important, because I think some people can get very defensive about it. And they can be like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that near me, I'm on prep. But you're on prep. Like that's good for you. But like I'm just trying to live my life normally. So I think definitely trying to make people aware of what you're doing, but doing it in a way that you don't annoy them with it, but two, that you understand that you're doing this, it's your own personal thing, rather than trying to expect anybody to alter their behavior around you. So now you've like hit it on the head with that.
Yeah, perfect. And also wanted to touch on Vaughn and your coach. So you worked with Vaughn the whole way through, and I think you would agree, having someone there with the experience is so important in your first season, especially. Don't know if you want to kind of touch on why you think that's so important.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, so I followed Chris Rendell's journey, who was he'd done very well in the 2021 season. And actually, no, Chris,
massive, by the way, Chris, if you're listening, I'm excited for seeing what's coming this year.
100%. So I'd seen his journey, and obviously seen that he'd worked with Vaughn, and I'd met Chris a couple of times. So it was a bit of a no-brainer. Like, I went to Vaughn, obviously told him my plans, and right from the off, like I had no one, I like was under no illusion that I was totally new to this world, and I'd said that I'm like, mate, I'm very confident in my own coaching. I'm very confident in the training that I provide to people, but the competition side of things, for me, I am like, I am a newbie. I have no idea what I'm doing, and I need you to guide me through that process. And he 100% did. And I think it's very, very important, if you're new to something and you want to give it as good a go as you can, it's worth that investment, and doing your research into the coach, making sure that obviously they're in it for the right reasons as well. And Vaughn himself's competed. He's very, very supportive. And I think just throughout the whole process, if you can find someone who can provide you that support, it makes the whole process so much better for you. And like I said, it was those hard days, and that's where it matters. Like, your body's going through a lot of changes, and you start to see things that you're like, should this be happening at this stage? Should this, like, or should I, like, you know yourself, you get to a point, you're like, I feel like I should be absolutely ripped. Like, I don't do good enough. I don't do this. And you have those little self-doubts, and sometimes you just need that person to kind of ground you a little bit and be like, mate, this is exactly where you need to be. And for me, that was Vaughn. And obviously what we done in the first season worked. And that's the majority of that is just down to him. Like, he set the plan, and I just done what he said. So, but and it was but it makes such a difference having someone in your corner with that experience and that knowledge. So it's one of my biggest things, would be definitely invest in a coach. If you're in a position to, then definitely do it.
Yeah, I think it's like, there's a few reasons why I think what you've said there. On the hard days, they've seen it 50 times, 100 times before. They know what to expect. They know, they already know maybe how you're feeling, or they've had clients who felt the same way and they can talk you through that. I think also from a expectations point of view, as a first timer, you have no idea what you're going to look like when you get lean, and no one can know that. Your coach can't look at you and know that. They can have they've probably got an educated guess, but no one knows how your body's holding body fat compared to muscle mass, and no one's going to know what you look like. And I think it's very hard when you look at maybe your exposure's been the Olympia, right? And you look at people at the Olympia and you're like, oh my God, they look amazing. I can't wait to prep because I'm going to look so good. And then it's just a different, especially on the natural side of the sport, it's a different ball game. So I think it's having a coach who can help set expectations with you and be brutally honest. And I think that's something coaches really need to make sure that they're being really authentic and being honest with clients and setting realistic expectations with them, because the name of the game in this sport is longevity, and it's about coming back and wanting to come back and compete again, and year after year wanting to go put the work in and come back to stage. And the people who do incredibly well in this sport are the ones who continue to come back, and pro cards are rarely won in your first year. It's a case that, some people are incredible and it does, or they've maybe put a lot of time in before they've ever stepped on stage. But for most of us, it's a case that you go away, you get experience, you get the feedback, you work on it, and you have to come back. So I think that being able for coaches to be able to set realistic expectations with their clients and saying, go and have this experience and use this first season to learn. And if silverware comes out the back of it, then that's great. But use this as an opportunity for you to learn and get as much experience as you can under your belt. And when we come back next time, we'll be in a better position to be really competitively minded. That's just my personal opinion of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that is the big, for me, that's a big allure of like the first timers event, though. Like, you do go for, you want to be competitive, like we've said before, but the experience is what it's all about. And I think because it's a totally new thing to everybody who's going through it, there will be some people who do it and they've decided, right, one season's enough for me. I've done what I set out to do. That's enough. But for those who obviously want to grow from that, and it's all about that, where can I improve? And that's the beauty of the sport, I think, is you're not one and done. You go in, you compete, you're very happy with the end result, but there's always something that you can improve on. And I think that's for me where bodybuilding is such a sort of appealing sport, is you're never done. Even when you're done, you're never done, because there's always something to come back in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time. Like, you want to come back and be a totally different sort of person every single time you get stepped on stage. And I think that's the beauty of it. So that expectation is definitely important, because you're not going to walk on stage and look like Ronnie Coleman in your first year. Do you know what I mean? It's not going to happen. So I think
I would have been shook if I looked like Ronnie Coleman.
But it's not going to happen. And I think, like you said, the expectation, especially in the natural game, because people see bodybuilders as these huge guys and girls who have just got ridiculous amounts of muscle mass. And when you actually look at the natural scene, you still have guys and girls with ridiculous amounts of muscle mass, but it's a totally different ballgame, and it's a totally different overall look that you would get. And I think it's having that expectation. You fully understand what you're getting yourself into. You're not on the drug. It's not got the enhancements that some of these guys and girls do. So you can only work with, realistically, the food that you're eating and then your work ethic, and that is essentially all you've got to work on, and your mental drive. So I definitely think the expectation is you need to be realistic. And I think if you know you're not there just quite yet, I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting in for the experience. For me, I didn't turn up and expect to win. Like, I genuinely didn't. Like, I knew that I would be quite competitive. I thought I would be in a good position, but I did not expect to win. I just wanted to do it. Like, I just wanted to step on stage and have that. That was the end goal for me. Be competitive and not look out of place.
Yes.
And so anybody who is obviously listening to this, like, you don't need to turn up and be the best person on stage in your very first year. You don't need to be that. You need to have the goal of competing because you've got the right reasons for doing it. But the expectation for you shouldn't just be, I need to win or I'm giving up on this sport, because like you said, it's always about that constant self-improvement.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose that brings us really nicely on to the day and talking about the day. So you did do incredibly well, you won. But how do you want to talk about the day in general and how you felt it went and highlights?
I think the first point to touch on was it was like 36 degrees.
Yeah, oh my God.
It was like the hottest summer ever recorded or something like that.
Yeah, and we're from Scotland, so even when it's warm up here, it's not that warm. It was down in London, it was roasting.
So yeah, like I got down, like, just to be fair, where it was held was absolutely fantastic. Camberley was actually a really nice place, like nice little sort of town centre. There was a lot of very tanned people walking about all day, so you could see obviously all the people that were going to be competing and stuff. But the day was good. I mean, it was obviously, you get up really early anyway because the nerves are there and the excitement's there.
Yeah.
And you're probably a lot more ready for it than you need to be at certain stages. Like, you're just raring to go all day. And for us, men's physique, because it's one of the bigger classes, was on a little bit later on the day. So there was a little bit of waiting around in the morning, which probably didn't help settle the nerves because obviously, like, I was nervous. I was really nervous. But I mean, it was like we said, like, backstage was so good. We had like a really good sort of area for training, like pumping up and stuff like that. And like, just made a couple of really good sort of friends throughout the day, and you just all kind of just chill out a little bit. Like, you just find that time to kind of, like, once the initial shock of like, right, I'm actually doing this is over, you spend a lot of time talking to people, getting to know people. The way that obviously the show's split is really good. I think they do it in like a morning and evening show format. So you go out, you do like your pre-judging, and then you go out and do your individual routines for the men's physique anyway. And I think it was good. I think getting out and getting that taste of it at the pre-judging, so you're all out together, was a really good way of doing it, because you're not obviously just stepping out onto the stage for the first time by yourself. I think my arse would have fell out if I'd done that. So it was really, really good. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I was sweating. I was like up there, and they say, like, when you look back, you're only on stage for like 5-6 minutes probably. And you feel like it's a lifetime sometimes. Like, you're up there, you're tensing as hard as you can, like, you're trying to hold your poses, there's sweat everywhere, there's tan in your eyes. But I mean, it goes so quickly. Like, it goes so quickly, and you kind of think, like, you get off stage and you're like, what has just happened? Like, the whole thing is a blur. But it's such a good experience, like, such a good experience. The venue was class, so obviously you're on that stage, you've got everyone looking, it's
a full house as well.
Full house, like, because I remember it was I actually remember it was a full house because I'd forgotten to get my girlfriend a ticket. So like, literally the day before the show, we were running about trying to get a ticket for her some, because she was down in London with me as well, which she was raging about. But like, it was the whole day, just from start to finish, for me, was just the only thing I wish I'd done was just like take it in a little bit more. But you'll know yourself, like, that day, it just goes so quick. And
it's hard to live in the moment a little bit when there's all this stuff going on.
But the experience was absolutely fantastic. Like, I genuinely, for a first show, like, regardless if I'd won or not, like, the whole experience and just how at ease I felt throughout the whole day was an absolute credit to Steph and Andy, because like, it was so much, like, it was a lot nicer than I thought it would be. Like, I genuinely, like, you do have that expectation of, because it's a competition, because you're against other people, there would be that kind of, like, that playground kind of just staring at each other. But it's not at all. You just chat to people and you get to meet all these, like, interesting characters from all over the UK and some like foreign guys as well who were across, and you're just like, this is class. Like everyone's here for the same reason, and it was just, I couldn't fault the experience. Like it was absolutely fantastic.
I'm so glad you felt like that. That's like literally how I felt on that day as well. I think that you never know what you're walking into, and you're never sure, even though you hope that it's going to be this great warm atmosphere, because it is a first timers show. You know that everyone's there, it's a competition, and you are a bit like, oh god, like what am I going to walk into here? Like, is somebody going to be, ego filled or anything like that? And it was the most, I don't know, it was just the best day. And I think it's hard to separate it when you do well, because I would say the same thing as you, like irrespective of placing or anything like that, that day itself was immense. And I think every single person I've spoke to that day, regardless of how things landed for them in placings, had the most amazing time. And it was the most positive kind of first experience for a lot of people, or close to the first experience for the rest of us who were in the novice classes. And it just felt like everyone was there cheering for each other, supporting each other backstage. I know backstage in the girls area, it was like, does someone have straighteners? Does someone have like hair spray or whatever? Like everyone was just there to help each other and wanted the best for each other, rather than it being that really kind of confrontational, competitive energy. It was also competitive, but in such a positive way. It was such a good day.
Like you said, I think the way that they designed the competition to be made everyone feel that way. They're obviously big promoters of building a community, and I think that's exactly what they tried to get across. Like even backstage, you had people telling, like you had the staff backstage telling, right, this class is coming up next, so this is when you should potentially start pumping up and stuff like that. And I think all these things that, like, because I never thought about that. Before I actually got backstage, I didn't think like, right, when am I actually going to start pumping up? How do I know which class is when? Because there's always a timetable, but timings can sometimes move around a little bit. So like I've got my coach on the phone at one point being like, right, when are you up? When do you know when you're up? When are you pumping up? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, but everything just went so smoothly, and I think it just took a lot of the nerves away, knowing that everything was very controlled, and everything was like, right, there was no pressure to be like, right, you're on stage in 5 minutes. Everything was really controlled. You know exactly what's going on, and it does relax you a little bit. And I think you can enjoy the day a lot more when it's like that, because you're not as nervous. Like there's still always going to be the nerves, but it's a lot more. It was a lot more relaxing than I thought it would be, and it was a lot more of a nice, friendly, positive experience. And that was it for me. It was just a very, very good day. So I just can't complain at all. It was class. Loved it.
That's good. I think it's down to, and I've said this so many times to so many different people, you say credit to Steph and Andy for creating the community environment around the federation, and around that day in particular, about bringing through first timers and junior talent within the sport to bring it forward, and to try and promote that we want new blood in the sport. We want people to come forward and take part, and that's the way that the sport continues to grow, is that we have people who come and try the sport, and if they have a great first show day experience, they're more likely to come back and have another experience later on. And I think everyone who takes part in the WNBF backstage, the supporting crew, everyone just wants to be there, and it just comes through. Like nobody's bored, nobody's like having a bad day, nobody's wishing that they were doing something different. Everyone has chosen to volunteer their time to be there because they love the sport, and they want to be there to help everyone backstage. And you could just feel that would just, to me, that was probably the deciding factor in what made that such a class show day, was just the environment backstage. And because of the guys that were working there and running us all around and keeping us right, and very aware that everyone was new to this. So that extra level of detail and attention.
That's it. Like it's just that it costs nothing to be nice anyway, but like everyone's just like super friendly, like wishing every single person good luck as they go out and stuff like that. And it just gives you that, like, right, how you feel, like backstage, just you're about to walk on, like how you feeling, he's excited, lads, and it's just that little thing, it just puts you at ease a little bit more, because at other shows, because I competed at a couple of other different shows. I'm like stood backstage and I'm like, I feel like I'm about to go and fight someone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm like sat there so tense. I'm
Yeah.
just like, it shouldn't be like that at all. It
No.
should just be so chilled, and it's a culmination of everyone's hard work. But at the end of the day, it's not life or death. It's
No.
you're doing something because you love it, and you
Yeah.
should be able to kind of express that you love it and
Yeah.
enjoy it. And it should be a positive experience, whether you come absolute top of your class or you come bottom of your class. It should be
Yeah.
a positive experience. It shouldn't be that kind of, like you said, confrontational kind of like,
Yeah.
right, I'm here to win, I'm here to
Yeah.
fucking beat everyone. And that's
Yeah.
what I just that's what I liked about it, because I genuinely, that was always the worry of, there was always, with something like that, there's always potential to kind of just
Yeah.
have that negative experience with it. But nah, from literally every single person working there was just
Yeah.
making everyone feel at ease. So nah, a very, very good day.
Yeah. It can be intimidating as a first timer, but the atmosphere there wasn't at all. It was so
Nah.
supportive.
And then you've got like some of these guys, like there's some people that I follow on Instagram and that. So you've got like Steve Hall, like Revive
Yeah.
Stronger and stuff. And I was like, I've followed him for years, never
Yeah.
seen him before. And I was like, this is class. So even
Yeah.
stuff like that for me, I was just like, it just put me so much more at ease. Yeah, just very altogether positive experience.
Brilliant. I'm so glad. It was like a really a celebration of like I think that's how it should feel. It's like a celebration of bodybuilding, natural
Yeah.
bodybuilding in particular. We're such a small little niche community. We should all be there for each other. We should be
100%.
supporting each other. And of course we're all competitive and we want to do well and we're there because we're driven competitively. But you know, it's you against you at the end of the day. We're up there to be judged against a criteria. And there's some people that are going to fit that criteria on the day better than others.
Yeah,
but if you go in there with that attitude that, you know, you're here for the right reasons, you're here because you love the sport and you want to see other people doing well, and if you love the sport, you love seeing other people who do well at the sport, I think, as well. So yeah, I'm so glad you had such a positive experience. So how, as a first timer, did you set yourself up and align your expectations for your first season?
I think as a first timer, you're going in and you are going in blind. So you're going into something that you've not done before. I think one of the most important things is not to put too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
Like we've said all through, you want to be competitive and you want to get the best possible position you can be in. But I'll say it all the time on stuff like my Instagram and stuff like that, is at the end of the day, you are only against yourself in the long run. So it is just, and it's so cliche and people say it all the time, but it is you v you.
It is.
And as long as you're focusing on just making yourself better than you have been previously, that, I think, in essence of it, that's the best thing that you can do. Like I didn't put any massive expectation on myself. I wanted to not look out of place. I wanted to be competitive, but I wasn't focusing on like, right, I want to win, then I want to win the overall, and I want to make sure that I'm the best. Like I literally just I'd done that photo shoot in 2021. I was like, right, I just want to be in better shape than I was in that photo shoot. And if I can achieve that, then I've achieved my goal. So I think for anybody who is thinking of competing, I think they should just set the goal of stepping on stage and set the goal of pushing themselves as hard as they can to be the best version that they can be when they get to stage.
Yeah.
I think if you can do that, then you've achieved something. You've achieved your goal.
Yeah.
If you pick up some silverware, you pick up a place in, fantastic. Like that is honestly like the best sort of cherry on top. But getting to that point of setting a goal of stepping on stage, getting into, for 99% of people, the best shape you've ever been in your entire life, and then getting to showcase that in front of a full audience where you're strutting your stuff and you're loving life and you're like, do you know what, I look mint. Like there is nothing better. Like it's so enjoyable. And I think it's something that if you can do that and you can achieve that goal, you can be incredibly proud of yourself. Like regardless of, like I said, placings, regardless of the competition element, you've improved. And that's where I would say set that goal, do everything you can to obviously to achieve it, but don't put too much expectation on the things that aren't as important. Like for me, the placings weren't important. They genuinely weren't. Like going into potential seasons down the line, for me, they will be important. I'll be like, right, I am wanting to kind of step up a little bit. But that first season, you've got to enjoy it, because otherwise you're going to put so much pressure on yourself, and it's definitely not needed.
Oh, completely. Honestly, I think we pretty much had the exact same mindset coming into season one. You know, the stage is always going to be there. And I think when you're the biggest thing for me is I know myself, like I am a very competitive person. Like put me in a bowling alley or like on like a game of air hockey or something, like I'll be raging if I lose. So what I didn't want to do was to be setting myself up in this first season doing something I've never done before in a very subjective sport, that I was going to be disappointed in bringing my absolute best. How could I ever set my expectation up to be that I could be disappointed in being the best version of myself, that, you know, looking the best I've ever looked and achieving something I've never done before, and stepping out my comfort zone and stepping on stage in a sparkly bikini, like in front of all these people, and like, how could you be disappointed in achieving something incredible? So for me, that was only ever the expectation this first season, was to get onto stage, get there safely and in a way that, you know, I was proud of the way that I'd managed my prep, and you know, trying to preserve my health as much as possible, and then see how it all fell out, take my feedback, go away, work my ass off, and come back in a few years' time and say, do you know what, actually I do want to be competitive this year, because I've had the experience, I've got some experience under my belt, and I know what to work on. I've worked on my feedback, and now it's time to get the competitive head on. But for the first season, it was always just about, I want to be proud of myself, and I can't set my expectation to be anything other than just turning up in my best. And if I turn up in my best, then I can't be disappointed.
Yeah, that is it 100%. Like you it's very hard not to put pressure on yourself, and I think a little bit of pressure is good to put on yourself, but like you said, you need that kind of realistic, like almost as if you're on the outside looking in, and you need to kind of be like, right, your first season, go out, enjoy it, relish it, absolutely enjoy every single second of it, because it will tell you everything you need to know about your kind of future in the sport. If you do that, you achieve what you wanted to achieve, and you're like, right, I'm hungry for more, then you know that you're gonna just keep getting better and better and better. But if you do that and you're like, I've achieved my goal now, I'm gonna move on to something else, then you've still got something to walk away and be proud of. So I think it's so important to kind of just have that kind of realistic expectation of no pressure on things like placings and stuff like that, but just have the pressure on the fact that you want to do as best you can, and that's all you can do, and be proud of that fact regardless of result.
Totally, completely. I think that really sets people up for tenure in the sport, to be able to come back and come back again and again and get better, or as you say, have an amazing experience and say, I've done it, tick that off my bucket list, and now I can go on and focus on something different. I think I'd love for you to give our first timer listeners 3 bits of advice. What would be your kind of 3 top tips or 3 bits of advice you'd give them for this season coming up?
So number 1, get a coach. Get a coach, or have someone with that experience in your corner, because you will need that person more than you realize.
Yeah.
Number 2 would be probably just don't lose sight of the goal. Like we've said before, like times get very tough at some points in prep, but remember the bigger picture. Like you will get through the hard times, and you know you're going to get through those hard times. So remember why you started it in the first place.
Yep.
And number 3, probably just enjoy the journey. Like you genuinely, like we prep through summer, so like there were points in summer where I could cut about and look mint, like t-shirt off on the beach, cutting about. Like enjoy it. Like you should be proud of the things you're doing. So don't forget to enjoy it, because there's nothing worse than getting to the end of that and being like, I've missed out on so much, blah blah blah. Like you can still do loads of stuff and enjoy it. So yeah, just enjoy the process, because it is one of the best things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that's great advice. Amazing. Thank you for being so honest and so open, Ian. I'm sure that the listeners have got a ton out of that. So let's end today's chat by looking forward and what's kind of next for you. So what have you been up to since you stepped off stage last year, and what's the plans for competing in the future?
So since I stepped off stage, I have been growing. Like we said, so we've been talking about longevity in the sport. I've dipped my toe in the water. I've absolutely loved it, and my plan now is to compete in 2024. So I've given myself a long period of time to improve, go away, enjoy training, enjoy growing, get better, and then come back. And that's the plan for me, is come back in 2024 and same, just apply myself with the same sort of mindset of like, I want to be competitive, I want to do well, but ultimately I just want to enjoy the process, and I really, really do. So that's the plans for me. But I'm getting to enjoy some food now, which is as you can tell, I've got the cheeks going on. So
I feel like I'm definitely got more and more cheeks, and as this podcast goes on, I'll be fluffier and fluffier throughout this year. But that's good. What we need to grow. Are you focusing on anything particular, or?
I think now that I know, like for me, men's physique was always the category that I was going for, but I didn't have any sort of focus towards that category before I decided I was going to do it. So now all of my training is designed with that in mind. So I'm training very focused on the men's physique criteria, very focused on improving those areas that needed improvement. And that was one of the beauties with WNBF, is you actually got judges' feedback, which I found really valuable, because I know then what I need to improve on. And you can tell anyway what you need to improve on. But for me, I know there was certain aspects of my physique that I really needed to improve on, and I'm just going to go and do that. That's the plan for me.
What is your focus? Are you telling us?
I think from the rear, like that was always my back. Like I've always had like decent arms. My chest is okay, shoulders are all right, but I've not really had any issues with my midsection. But my back was severely lagging behind for other body parts, and I think it was like that was the one shot that I didn't look at my back and I wasn't like 100% happy. I was like, I wish it looked better. Everywhere else I was like buzzing. That guy looks good. But my back, I was just like, I want one of them like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle backs, just like that. So that's my focus over the next 18 months or so.
That's awesome. And it goes back to what we said, like you don't know what you look like until you get stage.
Exactly.
And you're like, right, that's the area that I want to go and focus on. 100%. And that's the feedback that you had and what you could see from pictures yourself. So amazing. Sounds like it's going to be time well invested. I'm excited to see what 2024 brings.
Definitely. 100%.
Yeah. So I think that's been a brilliant episode, Ian. Is there anything else you want to kind of cover off before we finish?
No, that was good. Enjoyed that. Yeah, time flies.
I feel like we've been chatting for ages. Before we go, I do have one last thing I want to do, and I didn't tell you about this.
Yes.
So, like last week, I can't let you go without hitting you with the quick fire question round.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you 10 quick fire rapid questions, and I need you to answer instinctively. First thing that comes into your head. Are you ready?
I am. I'm ready.
Okay. Cream of rice or protein oats?
Protein oats all day long.
Yeah. Post-show meal of choice?
So cliche, but Five Guys.
Five Guys. Oh, you're so basic.
I know.
Pump or stim pre-workout?
Pump.
High rep range or low rep range?
It depends, but high rep range, because I like training arms.
Yeah. Biceps for days.
That's it.
Stairmaster or steps?
Stairmaster.
Free weights or machines?
Probably machines.
Are shows one from the front or one from the back?
Well, I need work on the back, so from the front for me.
You want it from the front.
Yeah.
Off season or prep?
Prep, because I like being shredded.
Best part of show day?
Just the people, the banter, the people backstage.
Yeah.
Love it.
Favorite thing about being a natural bodybuilder?
Knowing that I'll still be able to run about well into my 60s and not have any issues.
Health. Awesome. Love it.
Health is wealth.
All right, guys. That's it. What a brilliant second episode. Thank you, Ian, again for your time. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We're going to be back in 2 weeks' time with another incredible guest, Natasha Williams, our 2022 First Timers and Novice Women's Overall Champion. And we're going to be talking all things hybrid athlete, because Natasha is a CrossFitter and an incredibly successful bodybuilder, and also recovering from injury through bodybuilding. So until then, this has been the WNBF UK podcast. Thanks for listening.
Check out CNP, our sponsors, and sign up for our events at WNBFUK.com.